Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to First Church of Religious Science. Welcome to our Louise Hay gathering. This evening, we're going to be talking about trusting life and moving forward, dealing with what is. I had a teacher once who said, whatever is best. So I'm going to challenge us to see it that way tonight in this gathering. Whether you're joining us on Zoom, as most of you are, Facebook or YouTube, catching the replay, you're in the right place, the right time. This is your space, your time. This is a space for healing, insight, and transformation. This class is all about letting go of resistance, trusting the process of life, and of course, moving forward with faith and confidence. Now, before we get into the lesson, let's talk about all the things that are happening. This week, there's been a lot of things. I've heard uh, mountains have been renamed, there's bodies of water, there's places being renamed. There's all kinds of change. And we're all learning valuable lessons in life, all of us. One thing I think everyone could agree upon, everything seems to be shifting and moving fast. It seems like there's a lot to keep up with. People are reassessing priorities, trimming their budgets, and focusing on what works, what doesn't work. And as I was thinking about all these news items this week, I thought, well, that's a little bit about what we do here in our metaphysical classes. We're always trading in the lesser ideas for the greater. When we learn a new way of doing things and we let go of an old way of doing things, we reassess our priorities. And we focus on what works better for us. Uh, Artificial intelligence was in the news a lot in the past week or two because it's transforming medicine, it's transforming business, communication, it's transforming daily life for people all over the world, seems in every country, at a speed nobody could have ever anticipated. For many years, as a teacher of metaphysics, I knew a constant, which was the only constant is change. And I remember a time in my life around high school time where I thought a fax machine was a miracle. And then, of course, there was computers shortly thereafter. And now we have phones that are, I don't know, 20 times smarter than the computers we first had. And all of them carry them around with us. But with artificial intelligence, I mean, who could ever know things would be like they are? The way people are living now and working remotely is no exception. Everything is evolving at such a breakneck pace rather, and people are being called to change and adapt in ways that they had never ever before, that no one could have ever foreseen. Louise Hay used to say, in fact, one of her in one of her tours, it was called the I Can Do It tour. People are changing in ways, and they don't think they can, but you can do it. That was the name of her tour. She had a whole series that year. You can do it. And so I'm trying to say today is you can do this. You can rise to this occasion of rapid change. Especially those of you who are in this teaching, who are really in this teaching, because you're learning to trust the process of life. You're practicing affirmative living because you're living with the knowledge of who you are, what you are, and you're practicing seeing the good and not letting yourself get scared or worried. You realize in this class, in this teaching, that you are one with this creative energy. You realize also it's a part of you. So you keep shifting your perception to the affirmative. When something comes in that's new or scary or different, you shift your perception knowing that you're supplied and supported. And because we have this teaching, we have this gift, we have this knowledge, we are the fortunate ones, we're the very lucky ones. And the thing is, it doesn't mean we do it perfectly, because we don't. Because we're practicing this affirmative living, and then we seem to forget who we are, and that's a pretty normal thing. You've heard me say in different Louise Hay classes, from Louise, a song in Louise Hay's catalog, remembering and forgetting is the game that we play. So we tune in here more often. We tune in here on Wednesdays, Thursdays, or Sundays whenever we can, or we listen to the messages on YouTube. because we need to remind ourselves that we are supplied and supported, because we don't necessarily do it perfectly all the time. But because we know what we know, we have a huge advantage. And just think again, you can tune into these messages whenever you need a moment of inspiration or reminder. They're on 24 hours a day on YouTube and Facebook. So that's amazing. Um, but what do most people in the world do when they're faced with the enormous amount of change that's going on right now? Well, I'm going to tell you, most people will deny it. They'll deny it until they can't deny it anymore. Many people deal with change by resisting anything that's different. They resist dealing with what is. And part of his talk is acceptance and dealing with what is. But most of the world will dig in their heels and will say, I don't like this. I won't participate in it. Or this isn't how it used to be. Or they might say, I just want things back to normal. I might have said that years ago, but the thing is, we realize that there's no going back. I remember a line from Khalil Gibran in The Prophet years ago where he said, life never tarries with yesterday. So as much as we might like the good old days to go back to what we were before, it doesn't work that way. I learned from a 12-step program some 40 plus years ago. There was a line, acceptance is the answer to all my challenges today. And it would go on to suggest that nothing, absolutely nothing, happens in the universe's world in the universe by mistake. So let's go with the idea that life never tarries with yesterday, and the message again that I got from that program. Because I had that knowledge early on, I realized I needed to pull myself out of that kind of thinking. The kind of thinking that would suggest, ain't it awful or poor me? And I needed to stop catastrophizing and realize that I'm supplied and supported. And then I needed to learn next to be present, to be here now. That came from another book, Be Here Now. And so again, those pieces of advice I learned in those places. So it's very helpful for any of us who can learn how to trust life, as Louise Hay would say, and accept life on life's terms. Here's Louise's quote coming up again. She will say, I trust in the process of life to be there for me. But here's the truth for today. Again, there's no going back. We really can't return. Life only moves forward. So the real question, or one of the real questions I'm posing for today, are we going to fight life or are we going to trust it? One of my teachers used to say, life is evolving by means of us, each and every one of us. So that's the thing. We are inlets and outlets of this spiritual activity. And the universe can't do for me what it can't do through me. So I need to develop positive expectancy. In what part of my life? Well, the answer is in all areas of my life. So we're training ourselves to see the good in every situation. We're developing the positive approach that Louise spoke about, the affirmative approach, affirmative living that I talk about most every week. So this would suggest that there's nothing happening to us, but rather life is happening through us. I hope you get that distinction. Spiritually, we want to understand that nothing is happening to us. We want to understand that life is happening through us. So we want to develop a bigger container. We want to be open so we can accept more good. And if we resist the flow of life, if we block it, we will suffer. If we learn to trust it, if we learn to trust the process of life, we then begin to step into a world of infinite possibilities. I know many of you use the chat box here on Zoom, those of you who are watching on Zoom. You can comment. You can comment today on what one change in your life or in the world feels particularly uncertain right now. So something that is coming up for you as a change that's causing you some challenges. You can jot it down, or you can talk about it when I turn the call over to you. Or make a mental note of it. If you're watching on one of the platforms later, put it in the chat what this particular lesson has brought to mind. What is going on with you right now that you're not quite sure how to handle with all of the changes that are taking place? Because these are the subjects we're dealing with today. Before I go any further, because I forgot, let me mention that every Wednesday we have a class at 7 p.m. that Jimmy hosts. It's at the Creative Living class, same Zoom links. And every Sunday morning at 10:45, you can join with us too. If you happen to be here and this is your first time, I want to welcome you to those activities. And anyone who wants to support our work, to the right on the Zoom call, there's an opportunity. But the main thing is that you're here. And again, those of you who signed in late, welcome. So as we get into this lesson a little bit more, I want to start with a beautiful reading that reminds us of the power that we have as we step into life. Many of you have heard it before, I'm sure. It's called Risk. Very short, by Anais Nin. And it says, it's only got a couple lines. And the day came when the risk to remain tight in the bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. So let that sink in for a moment. I will say it one more time. And the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. So what does this mean for us? Well, it means that life is always moving forward, but so often we cling to what's familiar, even to what's uncomfortable, because we're afraid of the unknown. We stay sometimes in jobs that drain us because we fear the uncertainty of what could happen next or something new. Some of us stay in relationships that have run their course because the idea of being alone might be overwhelming, or the idea of taking care of yourself might be fearful. Or sometimes we hold on to things like resentments or the past stories so we can't be here now, or we have rigid expectations in our relationships and we're unwilling to do the inner work to see anyone in a different way. We're unwilling to do what we could do ourselves that would allow us to see people in our lives in different ways and new ways. So, what if the shift we need isn't leaving, but maybe changing how we show up in these different places, jobs, and relationships? So, think about a time in your life when you resisted change. Maybe you're resisting change now, but think about a time in your life where you resisted change only to later realize that it was the best thing that ever happened to you. Maybe there was a relationship that ended or a job that you moved on from, and you didn't like it at the time, but looking back, you think, my God, thank God that happened. So it could have been any of these types of things. Usually as we look back, we can see, I'll say, the hand of the divine in it, where we can't see it sometimes when it's happening. Could have been a breakup that made space for something healthier, something better, or for a new opportunity. Or maybe instead of walking away, it was finally choosing to see someone in your life again differently. Maybe it was choosing to heal, choosing to soften, choosing to shift your own perspective instead of holding on to old wounds. What if instead of clinging to the past, we chose to trust that something better is unfolding? So, this is what we're talking about tonight. We're exploring how to trust the process of life, how to stop resisting and start allowing and stepping into what's next with confidence. Let's talk about what happens when we resist life. So we're going to get very real for a moment. How many times have you fought against change, where resistance has been dogging your every step? How many times have you fought against change, refusing to accept something because it wasn't what you wanted? Maybe it was a job ending unexpectedly, and you thought, this is terrible. I don't know what I'm going to do. Dealing with change is a problem for people. Maybe it was, again, in a relationship shifting, and you kept trying to hold on to the relationship and telling yourself, if I do this, if I do this differently, if I'll be more acceptable, or if I do that, or you would kept on telling yourself, this will get better. Maybe you've been here before. Maybe you've had a moment where you thought, this isn't how things were supposed to go. This isn't what I've planned. Um, And it could have been a long-term goal, something you worked hard for a long time, and it didn't work, and it all fell apart. In moments like these, any of these where we have resistance, you felt like life let you down. But what if the very thing you were resisting was actually guiding you to something greater? What if the thing you have been resisting, maybe it's making an amends, maybe it's writing something. What if the thing you have been resisting was actually guiding you to something greater? Maybe you've been trying to control life. Trying to control life is like trying to stop the ocean. Picture yourself standing at the edge of the ocean, hands outstretched, trying to hold back the waves. What happens? The water keeps coming in. You push against it, but the waves don't stop. You'll exhaust yourself trying to push it back, but nothing changes. That's what resistance is like, or what it feels like. Trying to control life is like trying to stop the ocean. So again, picture yourself standing on the edge of the ocean, hands outstretched, trying to hold it back. The waves aren't going to stop. You're exhausting yourself, right? So the truth is, we don't stop change itself. The company that was closed down is still going to restructure, no matter how much you wished it wouldn't. The relationship was evolving, whether you were ready for it to evolve or not. The economy was still shifting, regardless of your plans. Your kids were still growing up, becoming their own people, making their own choices. You can't stop it. Technology has been advancing and it will continue to advance, changing the way we work, the way we communicate, and the way we live. A loved one, no matter how much we didn't like it, was aging, no matter how much you wanted to slow down time. The seasons changed, the leaves fell, the winter came, and the spring returned. The thing to take in from this lesson is life is always, always moving forward with or without our permission. The question is, do we resist the waves or do we learn how to ride them? Again, life is moving forward with or without our permission. Do we resist the waves or do we learn how to ride them? So do we fight life and wear ourselves out, or do we find a way to go with the flow? Do we find a way to move with life? Because here's the truth: what we resist persists. Wherever we find ourselves all bogged down in resistance, it will persist. Have you ever noticed that the more you fight something, the more power it seems to have? And that's been true for me. The more you fight something, the more you energize it. If you dwell on how unfair something is, you're going to stay stuck in anger and frustration. And what happens when you're stuck in anger and frustration? Then you attract more reasons to feel frustrated. Whatever we focus on, we learn in this teaching will expand. So if we keep telling ourselves stories of life being unfair, then we're going to keep reflecting that reality back to us. So those of you who are in this teaching, who are really practicing this teaching, are not going to succumb to that type of thinking for long, because you're going to dust yourself off and pick yourself up. And you're going to say, I'm not a victim of the world I see. I have power. I am powerful. I'm one with power. So if you refuse to let go of the past is going to be with you all the time. It's going to follow you everywhere. Not because the past has any real power, but because your mind keeps recreating it. The same patterns, the same emotions, the same experiences will come around until you decide to choose something new. If you spend all of your energy wishing something wasn't happening, you're going to miss the opportunities. They're right in front of you right now. And why? Because your mind has become locked in on what shouldn't happen, shouldn't be, instead of what could be. Again, if you spend all your energy wishing something wasn't happening, if that's the internal dialogue, then you're going to miss on all the good stuff. The opportunities are right in front of you. And again, the question, why? Because your mind is locked on all of the negative stuff instead of what the things that could be there, that really are there. You can't receive new possibilities while your gripping tightly onto what's already gone. If you resist change at work, for example, others will move forward while you are left behind. So here's an underlying truth. Change doesn't wait for your permission. It moves with us or without us. And when we resist, we don't stop the change. We just make ourselves miserable in the process. If you fight against aging, for example, you don't stop time, you just add stress and worry to your days. But what if instead of seeing aging as a loss, we saw it as a time of expansion, where we acquire more wisdom, more presence, more appreciation for life? Because the real loss isn't time, it's the joy we miss by resisting where we are. If you stuff your emotions instead of dealing with them, they don't go away. They show up in other ways, through stress, through illness, through sleepless nights, through worry. The thing I want to mention next is your mind and your body are always in conversation with one another. We often think of the mind and body as separate, or most people do. People in this teaching do not. Because the mind and the body are always in communication. What we refuse to process mentally, the body takes on physically. If you've got a lot of unexpressed grief, it can show up as tightness in your chest. It can show up in a lot of ways. If you've got ongoing stress, it can be manifest as headaches, fatigue, illnesses of one kind or another. If you're suppressing your anger, stuffing anger, it doesn't just disappear. It finds a way into our muscles, our digestion, that affects our sleep. When we resist what life is asking us to deal with, that resistance doesn't just stay in our thoughts, it settles into our bodies, our energy, and our daily experience. So here's the truth. Resisting doesn't stop what's happening, it only makes it harder. So instead of fighting life, what would it be like if we practiced accepting what is, or if we practice accepting life on life's terms? Because acceptance doesn't mean giving up or giving in. It simply means freeing ourselves from the struggle. There was a book by Stuart Wilde I used to like years ago, which was Life Was Not Meant to Be a Struggle. I think a lot of the struggle comes from the resistance of wanting to have everything our way. Louise would suggest to take the positive approach, to trust the process of life. So freeing ourselves from struggle means choosing peace over resistance, choosing growth over fear, and choosing trust over control. So let's get focused for a moment. What we accept, we transform. Yes, what we accept, we transform. Louise said, self-acceptance and self-approval are the keys to all positive changes. So what if instead of saying, this shouldn't be happening, this isn't, or you're getting really angry, we asked, what is life trying to show me right now? Because I go back to what Dr. Bill used to say to us, whatever is best. See, I didn't always like what was happening, but the thing is, I've lived long enough now to look back on things and can understand how all these events that took place brought me to a higher place of understanding. So instead of saying this shouldn't be happening and just, being on and on with ain't it awful or some version of that, what if we asked ourselves, what is life trying to show me now? What if we accepted the challenges that are right in front of us? What if we accepted that they were invitations to grow? What if we accepted that our past doesn't define us unless we keep carrying it, right? What if we accepted that life isn't working against us? And what if we understood that it's always working for us, even when we can't see it yet? So here's something powerful. When we accept where we are, we open the door for transformation. We're at peace. We are releasing the struggle. Again, when we accept where we are, we know all is well, we open the door for transformation. The moment we stop resisting, something shifts. Suddenly, possibilities appear. Answers will come. Peace returns. Oftentimes, I just sleep on something. Next day, I'll have the answers. But we're always encouraging people to take a pause and inquire within, because Spirit is always there with the answers. So we want to practice self-acceptance. Remember this line: when we accept where we are, know that all is well, that will open the door to transformation. And again, the moment we stop resisting, things will shift, possibilities will appear, answers will come, and peace returns. Ralph Waldo Emerson, in his essay, Circles, said, "Let us take our bloated nothingness out of the path of the divine circuits." So I've seen that, drawings of that before. Imagine yourself, you are, one with this energy. What if we get all those stories out of the way? That's what he refers to as the bloated nothingness, out of the path of the divine circuits. It means when we cling, what he's talking about is when we cling to what no longer serves us, be it our old fears, our outdated beliefs, our resistance to change, then we're blocking the flow of new energy, new thoughts, new insights, and new opportunities. It means that we hold on out of fear, and the more we do that, it's harder for the divine to work through us. See, the divine, you're one with the divine. The divine can't do for you, again, what it can't do through you. So the suggestion here is to get all that stuff out of the way, the stories. We have lots of stories. And as we're able to let go of all that, the divine is able to work through us. So this means that real transformation begins the moment we stop griping or hanging on to what we think should be and start embracing life as it is. So here's the truth. When we accept life, we don't lose power, we gain power. We stop wasting our energy fighting the past or fearing the future, and instead, we step fully into the creative power of this present moment. The point of power is always where? It's in the present moment. And so the real question becomes, what are we holding on to? What are we holding on to that, in fact, is holding us back? How often do we clog our own energy with fear, doubt, and outdated thinking? We fill our minds with opinions, with attachments, wanting things to be this way or that way, and resistance. And all of this keeps us from moving forward with joy and ease. We get so caught up in thinking how things have to be, should be, that we leave no space for inspiration, wisdom, and new direction. And this is exactly what I've spoken to about in other lessons where I've talked about the four agreements. In that book, Don Miguel Ruiz teaches that our limiting beliefs create the smoke that blocks our inner light. So Emerson's saying the same thing, that we must clear the clutter out of our minds so that this divine intelligence can move freely through us. Because when we stop holding on to our bloated nothingness, again, our opinions, our worries, our false sense of control, we then become clear channels for truth, insight, and divine wisdom. And that brings us to an important question. What if instead of filling our minds with fear, we made room for something very new? So here's a little exercise. Think of an outdated belief, a fear, or an expectation, and take a moment to ask yourself, what am I holding on to that no longer works for me? Let this thing rise, see it clearly, acknowledge it. And now imagine letting it go, because when we release what no longer works for us, we make space for what's next. So right now, as I spoke of earlier in this lesson, AI, artificial intelligence, is transforming the world. And for some people, it's terrifying. They think it's going to take away all the jobs. It's moving too fast. What if it replaces us? Or what if it replaces my job? But let's turn that whole conversation around and ask, well, what if AI is actually creating more opportunity than ever before? What if instead of something to fear, it's something we can use for incredible good in the world? It's already revolutionizing medicine, detecting diseases earlier, and improving healthcare. It's transforming education. It's giving people access to knowledge faster than ever before. It's streamlining so many businesses, helping people work smarter, not harder. So the real question isn't, is AI bad? It's how can we use this for good? Because if we fear progress, we miss the chance to be part of a great innovation. If we embrace it, we can use it to enhance our lives, expand our creativity, and open new ways to help others. And that brings us to one more big or even bigger question. What else are we resisting? What are you resisting that could actually be helping? Take a moment and ask yourself for tonight the question, what am I holding on to that no longer works for me, no longer serves me? Let that come to your awareness, acknowledge it, and now again, it's your second opportunity. Imagine letting it go, because when we release what no longer serves us or works for us, we make space for what's next. Wayne Dyer famously said, change the way you look at things, and the things you look at will change. So, what if instead of resisting change, we saw everything as an opportunity to evolve, everything as a stepping stone? So let us all pause and reflect. What's something in your life that you want to let go of? What if instead of fearing it, you saw this as an invitation to something new, something wonderful? If life is always evolving, why fight it? The universe itself is in motion, it's expanding, it's growing, it's shifting, and yet when life pushes us towards change, we resist. But real growth will happen when we move with life, not against it. Louise reminds us what you're thinking and believing is always, always creating your future. If you want something new, you must make space for it. So what if the change you're resisting isn't a roadblock? What if the change you are resisting is a doorway? So let's think about those things. The water of life is always flowing, moving, always shifting. So I'd like you to imagine yourself gripping onto something, a branch, a rock. Hold on tightly as you can. Notice you're resisting the current. You're working against the flow. But the river is still moving. The water is still flowing. So take a deep breath and imagine what it would be like just to let go, to release the branch, to stop fighting, to allow yourself to float, not by force, not by struggle, but by the natural rhythm of life itself. What if letting go isn't falling, but floating? Affirm silently or out loud, I release my grip and I allow life to unfold. Again, I release my grip. I trust the process of life and I allow it to unfold. I trust that all things are working for my good. I move with life, not against it. So let's take another breath and exhale. So bring your awareness back to the space. So I want to turn the cameras over to you. This is your personal time to reflect on dealing with what is and these perspectives of life only moving forward, not clinging but trusting, realizing that everything happening right now is an invitation to something greater. And so it is. Now it's time to hear from all of you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. We appreciate your support, your love, and all your great comments that we get every week.